shit. What an amazing episode. How we doing, Walking Dead family and friends? This is Brian Castrillo again for another review for Here's Negan, the final episode of Season 10C. The last time we're going to hear the word season finale. This episode was amazing. There was a lot of parallels to previous episodes. We had... Man, this episode was amazing and easily one of the best of the entire series. Woo, definitely the best of this of 10C. There was a lot of well, let's just get right into it. So this, of course, is Negan's backstory. How Negan came to be who he is, that we know as the villain. And what's amazing is they got Hillary Burton Morgan, his wife in real life, to play Lucille, which was fantastic. The two had amazing chemistry. Thank you, Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Thank you, Hillary Burton. You guys were phenomenal. Just wow. In fact, this episode, as far as brilliance, acting, script, screenplay, everything, in my opinion, rivals and is right there with the episode Clear. And we're going to get back to Clear because there's an interesting parallel at Clear and in this entire 10C, 6 episodes, because I believe a lot of these episodes, when you look at the whole picture, this is going to be sort of a springboard or a catapult into the season. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of little pieces, a lot of Easter eggs, things you put together, and wow, just absolutely amazing. Well, anyways, we start the episode off and we're listening to Negan and Carol have a conversation. Negan is telling Carol how she promised him that if I took care of Alpha, I did my part. Now it's up to you to do your part. That Carol would, talk for him and let him live with everybody else. Of course, Maggie is back. That throws a wrench in everything. I'm sure that wasn't... No one expected Maggie to be back. I, for one, am excited for her. I love Maggie. I love seeing little Herschel Jr. Of course, Glenn was my favorite of all time. And that's because I really related to him. We were both pizza delivery drivers. I felt like he is just kind of like that regular guy. So I always had a kind of a personal connection with Glenn for a lot of reasons. And we all know what Negan did. So we're jumping into this backstory to find out, what happened. And so I'm going to be doing a lot of jumping around because this episode kind of does a little jumping. There's a lot of time jumps back and forth. And in the beginning, it was a little bit weird, but it all made sense at the end, how things were working out. And we find out Negan, prior to, the villain that we all know and what he's done, is that Negan was kind of a loser, or he wasn't really that cool of a guy. I mean, nothing wrong with gaming, but he's sitting there gaming, talking shit to young kids, which, truth be told, I thought that was hilarious. We find out Negan was cheating on his wife, Lucille. He lost his job as a gym teacher, which he absolutely loved, because of a fight that he got into in a bar, which ended up being one of his kids' parents, and he got a felony and he lost his job like that. And this caused, Lucille to actually kind of take care of their little family, if you will, and they had to pay his hospital bills, and it put a lot of stress in their relationship. And Negan was just kind of like this guy that wasn't really, had no goal, no plan. He always said he was going to do something, but really he was just kind of like a fart in the wind, if you will. And one of the things that I thought was super funny is when Negan was, he was playing games and talking shit to those little kids. We find out where that jacket, his famous leather jacket came from. And I guess Negan had bought it after he got fired. And then you see, and Lucille's bringing it up to him, and she says, "What is this Happy Days shit?" Which I lost it. I thought that was fantastic. I guess saying he's trying to be the Fonz or in some midlife crisis, but I absolutely love that line. It was perfect. And she's saying, "Well, I'm returning this expensive leather jacket," and then Negan's like, "Well, I lost the receipt." So, and of course she's pissed, and she's like, "Well, I'm gonna try to return anyways. Whatever." And but there's these time jumps, and we see Negan, and he's tied up, and he's saying, "You got to let me go. I need those the basically the not water, but it's what helped Negan or Lucille survive, because she had just been recently diagnosed with having cancer, and she needed these to help keep her alive. And Negan, in this time jump, he's being held by this gang or whatever, and they want to know where he got this, because these bags are super rare. I mean, where do you find this stuff in the zombie apocalypse? And he had told him, it was at this warehouse. He didn't know where they were going, and this guy's just roughing him up, a couple punches to the face, and he's threatening him, saying, if we go and find this stuff and it's there, you can bring this home to your wife, and if not, then I'm gonna just pour this down the toilet and make you watch. This guy was a really bad dude, and when you're listening to him, he kind of reminds me of Merle Dixon, just the raspy voice, the way he talked. Very reminiscent of me, at least for Merle Dixon. So then there's another time jump, and Negan and they show how he's, finding this medical stuff that he needs for Lucille to help her. And he comes across a guy named Franklin, and who's a doctor, still around in the zombie apocalypse, and he has just this one gun, and he's running up on him, and you see like figures that are up on this RV, and they look like they're shooting. Very kind of a blurry picture, and he's running up on this, and then the Franklin comes up, and he's like, "Don't shoot," whatever, and Negan's telling him what he needs, and all of a sudden you see him get hit in the back of the head with a bat. And oh my goodness, if it's not Laura, one of the saviors, which I absolutely loved her character, and she hits him over the head with the bat, and we find out that Franklin calls that his daughter, but he helps him. He puts some fluids back in Negan, and he feeds him some, looks like chicken noodle soup, and they're just kind of helping him back. And then Laura actually gives him Lucille. That's the first time we see that. And at the time, it's not really a big deal, but to us, we all know what Lucille means to the story, what it means to Negan, and it's a big reason why we love the character. And so he gets, and they give him everything he needs, all this medicine, and then, that's where and it jumps back, and he's dealing with these people again, and they got all his stuff, and then Negan eventually tells him where Franklin and Laura are, and so they go back and they capture him, and then Negan gets this what he needs back from them, and looks like they're really bad, and it sounds like I don't know if they're trying to rape Laura or they got Franklin tied up, but again I apologize, I'm jumping around because some of the story was jumping around, but right before this, Lucille and Negan, they're kind of going, showing some of their life together. They show them eating, having I guess it's a dog food dinner, which was kind of interesting. But that was an interesting parallel because it reminded me of how Negan, or actually was Dwight, because of Negan, made him feed Daryl dog food. But they're having this. It's showing a little bit into their life, and right before Negan goes actually looking for this stuff, you see um, Lucille's asking him not to go, and she's like, "Stay here with me." Now, again, I got to jump back because my mind's all over the place, and that's because my mind is blown from this episode. But I'm going to go back to where she was initially diagnosed, and she's telling Negan, I need someone to be there. I need a ride home. And Negan would not even go with her to the doctor's office to give her a ride home. He's saying, half the time, the doctors just have your ass out in the air, and then you're waiting around 3 hours, and then nothing's wrong with you. So Negan wouldn't even go. We find out later that Negan was actually with Lucille's friend Janine, and they were carrying on this affair, which was kind of really shitty, and it showed on him. But all this is stuff that weighed on Negan, as we're going to find out. But back to that scene where Lucille's, begging him not to go, and she, she tells him, I know about you and Janine, and this devastates Negan, that because he didn't think that she knew, and so she's trying to convince Negan that you've done you're not that you're not that guy. And Negan's like, I'm a luck. I can't believe you even stuck around with me. And she's telling him how I stuck with you because I could always see the man you are today. But she's begging him not to go. And Negan's like, no, we are not giving up. I can get this stuff. I can make this work. We're going to get what you need so we can help keep you alive. There's no way we are giving up. We are a team. I'm going to do this. And then that's where he gets into trouble with this gang that, captures him and wants to know where all this medical stuff is. Negan, of course, rats out Franklin and Laura, and then they go get him. But when Negan comes back, he finds Lucille dead, and she's a walker. And on the wall, she says, "Please don't leave me like this," because. But what's interesting, when you come back to her, you see she's wearing the same exact clothes as when Negan left initially, which means that she had fully intention to kill herself, because you see she had a bag on her head. She never changed, so it had to have happened that night. So this was something that she had planned, because she didn't want to go on and have Negan, feel guilty and have to take care of her all this time. She was just basically letting go. And when he did not want to stay with her, that I guess that was enough for Lucille, that she was just going to give up. And that completely devastated him. He ends up going back to where this biker gang is. Interesting enough, I thought it was kind of cool that it was in Ohio. If you look on the back of their vest that they were wearing. Of course, the Commonwealth in the comics was in Ohio. I am actually from Ohio, OH. But Negan is pissed off at this time, and you see Franklin. He's tied up in the chair this time, and he's unloosing a little screw that Negan had started actually earlier, and it actually helped Franklin get away. Throughout all this, but Negan outside, he comes in and he whacks one of his henchmen, and kills him for Lucille's first kill, or Negan's first kill, however you want to look at it. And he finally gets in, he breaks the door. You see the main guy, he's trying to shoot him, but Franklin gets out and knocks him over the head with a chair, which gives Negan enough time to get in there with the gun and point it at his head. And he instead takes Lucille, smashes his hand, and now this guy can't even fight, and he ends up tying him down. And this is very reminiscent of the lineup where Rick and our family is all tied up and on their knees. He has this guy on his knees. He's tied down, and this is the Negan that we know. He starts, talking about how how he was not really a good guy through life, and he wasn't saying the same thing as the lineup, but very reminiscent. The way he talked, the way he held himself and carried himself, it was very Negan-esque. And I wrote down this quote that was kind of interesting to me because, remember I mentioned Clear, because I feel this is very parallel, and why I think, and maybe some people disagree with me, but Duane Jones might be coming back. And I see this parallel because Negan goes on, and I'm gonna write this down, I'm gonna read it to you. It says, when people get so angry, they say they see red. That shit is actually true. When this asshole comes at me, and he's talking about the guy in the bar that he beat up and which got him in trouble. When this asshole comes at me, all I see is red. And it's like I'm looking through the world through blood. And of course, if you remember in episode Clear, we hear Morgan, all I see is red. And he's talking about how his wife, at least in his mind, his wife attacked his son Duane, and he's just angry, and all he sees is red because he blames himself because he never killed his wife as a walker, which, and if you go back to the story, he's calling his son Duane, and then according to him, in his crazy state, she attacks him, and all he sees is red. And it's amazing episode, one of the best episodes easily of the entire series, which is where I put this episode as one of the best in the entire series. And you can see that parallel because they're both talking about seeing red. And if you go into the comics, there's the Michonne, in her storyline. Now throughout the comics, she goes through so much trauma, and then finally she gets this win, and she sees her daughter, her picture is on this wall of the Lost, and it's actually her daughter Elodie, who she had long thought was dead, but it turns out she was alive. Same situation with Morgan. Morgan, at least in the show, kind of mirrors Michonne's comic book because he goes through a lot of trauma, he's talking about how everyone dies around him, and then he's meant to live in this world because he's a coward or whatnot. But I believe in his crazy state of mind, and through all his grief from not being able to protect his wife, that maybe he did not see what he thought he saw. Morgan was definitely clearly nuts in that episode Clear, and it's not the last time that we see him go kind of nuts throughout the series. But there's definitely a parallel where both Negan and Morgan are talking about seeing red. And if you go back to the earlier episode in 10C, you got that bottle of Duane Jones whiskey. Now, I just thought that was an interesting. It's kind of like they're dropping hints all along. And I thought it was nice that we also saw Rick, because after Negan, comes back, and he's given that speech to this guy, and he's basically telling him, he's like, you better hope that I don't stop talking, because when I do, something bad is going to happen to you. And that's when he just smashes him with the bat. And he comes back to, after that, he's back to Alexandria, and Carol brings him to the cabin where Leah was. Now that's bringing up, reminding me how Leah had that, that tattoo of the Fortita Salutis, where she's basically some sort of military, probably special ops. We've seen in the previous episode, The Verge, where, Daryl sees these military people dressed up. Are they part of her group? Are they part of the Reapers? They clearly have some military training, a lot of ammo and whatnot, which you see Daryl find in Diverge. And of course, that jumps back to the original Reaper guy in the initial episode of 10C where Maggie is being hunted and she's being marked. And of course, if you go back to some of my episodes, I believe that when he said the Pope marked her, I believe the Pope is Georgie. And I can go into that, but that's in a previous video. But anyways, Carol brings him back to this cabin where Leah used to live, and is telling him that, or at least she's inferring that the council said he's banished. And even Negan said, is this really true, or is this something Carol's doing just for her own? And she just kind of smiles and leaves him on his way. But then Negan, he comes back, and oh my goodness, this ending. Holy shit. The way, when you see Maggie just glaring at Negan, and you see Negan just kind of, they have kind of a silent stare off, and then Negan gives that smile. Oh, that is telling me that there's going to be some sort of standoff between them. They're going to be fighting over territory, possibly. Maybe when they get to the Commonwealth, maybe they're both going to be, fighting for the governorship or some sort of political power within that structure. And because Negan is very charismatic, he could possibly take on Rick's role, because Rick was always giving those speeches. You can see Negan possibly falling into that role, and maybe he gets Rick's death, or possibly what I kind of feel that Herschel is going to be the one to do it in the end, and which would kind of be like Rick's death, because of course in the comics it's Sebastian that kills Rick, but I think it would be a better storyline if we see Herschel do it because of what he did. But yeah, oh my God, that standoff, that stare, and then Negan's just smiling and basically saying that, you know what, fuck you, Maggie. You don't like it. I mean, I'm not trying to, but I'm basically saying that I'm not going to be, I'm not going to back down. I'm here to, and if you want to do something about it, I'm not just going to bend over. You're going to have to work hard to get back to me. So he's kind of in that same Negan mindset. Maybe not that brutal sense of back to what he did to Glenn, but he's definitely in that same mindset. He's not in the passive way we've seen Negan recently. Now, a couple interesting things I wanted to bring up, at least that I noticed through here, is in the beginning of the episode, we see Maggie, she's talking to little Herschel, and she's talking about a song that they used to sing, and it's "You Are My Sunshine," and that reminds me of how Negan forced Carl to sing a song, and he sang "You Are My Sunshine" to him. That's what that reminded me of. Now, some of the music in here I thought was perfect. You hear AC/DC Back in Black, and then when Lucille she's really in her worst stage. They're singing the "You Are So Beautiful to Me," which, I mean, it was really touching. This whole episode had me just really emotional. It was so well done. Other things I noticed was, of course, Negan's t-shirt, which was the Vintage Motors 1976, and they kind of spoke on his love for bikes and riding, whatnot. But the interesting shirt was actually Lucille's shirt, which was the Half Moon. Now, of course, recently we had the Whisper Award just end, and Half Moon, of course, is Beta. So Lucille was always a fan of Beta, and I kind of wish they would have played one of the songs. I mean, that he had. It could even been off the record. That if you got the Walking Dead supply drop, that I kind of felt like that would have been good if they played that song. But what else do I got here? But yeah, I think 10C was a great overall. Of course, I think Here's Negan was by far leaps and bounds best out of all of them. But there's a lot of little Easter eggs throughout everything that's going to lead into something big. I think we're going to find more about the Reapers in 11. There's going to be some sort of power struggle with Negan and Maggie. It's going to be interesting how Daryl's going to side when it comes to Leah. Also, I thought it was great to see Rick again, even though it was old footage. You, of course, remember at the tree where Rick and Negan had that famous battle, and that is where Negan went back and found Lucille. And this was towards the end. And yes, I know I'm jumping around, but I was just so excited, and I got all this stuff in my mind. And he kills this walker that's slowly coming up to him after he finds it, and Lucille breaks. And in the comics, that he had a burial where he kind of finally put his need for Lucille to rest. But he takes it back to the cabin where Leah was, and he's basically apologizing. He's saying, I don't know why I even named a bat after you. Why I couldn't have been a better husband and treat you better, etc., etc. And he ends up burning Lucille. And it was that moment that he was able to put that to rest. And then that's where we see that scene where Negan and Maggie are having that stare down, and Negan just kind of smiles at him, or her rather, which the tension was so thick. It was ridiculous. Another thing that was kind of interesting was, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this already, but Michonne, when the kind of a callback to when Negan was still in jail, and he's asking, where is Lucille? And she's like, it's still out there, of course, referencing the tree, because basically she's saying that we don't care about your stupid bat. It doesn't mean anything to us. Maybe it means something to you, but we don't care. So they just left it there. And I thought that was interesting, which it kind of makes sense. I don't know why they would want to keep it. They don't need a memory of that. But yeah, overall, amazing episode. I absolutely loved it. Powerful performance by Hilary Burton and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Just absolutely amazing writing, music. Just absolutely wow. I do hope that they come back and we get to learn maybe in the future. I know there was some possible mention of some future Negan projects, and I hope that we get to learn how the Saviors were built. And interesting, I believe the school that Negan was teaching at, I think it showed it on his hat, was called the Saviors. Little Easter egg there. But I do hope that we get into see how him, Laura, and what happened to Franklin and how the Saviors were built. I do hope that they get into that. And what did you guys think? Did you love this episode as much as I did? Did you like the different Easter eggs? The how emotional this was? For a moment there, I mean, Glenn is my favorite, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I was feeling somewhat kind of emotional towards Negan, but at the same token, I do understand where Maggie's coming from. And I try and put myself in her shoes as well, but this is going to be one interesting power struggle when it comes back. But yeah, and as always, I love to do a shout out to my friends. And in my very first video of doing these reviews, I actually did a shout out for the Squawking Dead. Now, the Squawking Dead held an amazing contest where I actually ended up winning the Squawking Dead's The Walking Dead Universe, Ultimate Fan, which I'm still in awe of how they did that, and I'm very thankful for everything they did. It was so much fun. But I want to give thanks to them and put them on kind of a pedestal, because Rachel and David, if you guys aren't following Squawking Dead, what are you guys doing? You need to follow them. Their podcasts are amazing. Follow them on Twitter. Follow them on YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook. They're even on iHeartRadio. You can listen to them. Absolutely amazing podcasts. The information you get from them is wonderful. Stuff you're not going to hear from really anyone else. They have great interviews, contests, and they're really just really cool people, and you need to get to know them. You need to follow them and really be a part of their world. True Walking Dead family right there. And I hope you enjoyed my video. If you liked it, give me a like there, give me a follow. Let me know in the comments what you thought. I hope you enjoyed it. I love this episode. I love doing these now, and these will evolve over time. But yeah, thank you for listening. Love you guys.